Emma Carson sat quietly in the courtroom, her fingers nervously clutching the edge of the wooden table. At just 17 years old, she was no stranger to hardship. Raised in foster care after losing her parents in a car accident, Emma had spent most of her teenage years moving from one temporary home to another. But nothing had prepared her for this moment, the moment she faced serious accusations that threatened to tear her fragile life apart. Her foster family accused her of stealing valuable items from their home. A necklace, some money, and other small but important possessions had gone missing. Emma insisted she was innocent, but the evidence seemed stacked against her. Witnesses from the foster home claimed to have seen her near the places where the items disappeared. Her own voice, usually steady, had cracked when she told the police her side of the story. Now, in the crowded courtroom, Emma sat with her faithful companion Jasper curled quietly at her feet. Jasper was not just any dog. He was a golden retriever, trained to be her emotional support animal. The dog had been with her through every difficult day, calm, gentle, and always watchful. He seemed to understand more than a pet ever could. The judge entered the room, and a hush fell over the spectators. Cameras flashed, and the murmurs died down instantly. The trial was about to begin. Emma tapped her foot nervously beneath the table, a small habit she used to release her anxiety. Jasper's ears twitched in response. Her defense attorney, Mr. Rivera, gave her a reassuring nod. He was a tall man with kind eyes, someone who believed in her innocence. "Stay calm, Emma," he whispered. "We'll get through this." The prosecutor stood and began to lay out the case. His voice was confident, painting a picture of a rebellious teen who had taken advantage of the foster family's trust. "Miss Carson had access to the house and the opportunity," he said. "We have witnesses who saw her acting suspiciously around the times the items went missing." Emma felt her heart pound harder. She wanted to speak up, to tell the truth, but the courtroom rules forbade her from interrupting. Instead, she kept tapping her foot. Jasper shifted, his eyes flicking toward the audience gallery. Suddenly, Jasper growled softly. It was a low, deep sound that barely caught the attention of the court. Emma looked down at him, puzzled. Jasper's gaze was fixed on a man sitting near the back of the courtroom, a man Emma hadn't noticed before. The man wore a gray jacket and had a stern, almost cold expression. Emma's mind raced. She remembered seeing someone like him near the foster home the day the items disappeared. Could it be the same person? Jasper growled again, louder this time, making several jurors turn their heads. The judge looked up sharply. "Control your dog," he said firmly. Emma bit her lip, trying to calm Jasper. But the dog was persistent. His eyes never left the man in the gray jacket. Mr. Rivera noticed too. He leaned closer to Emma and whispered, "Do you recognize that man?" Emma hesitated, but nodded slowly. "I've seen him before," she said quietly. "Near the house, the day everything happened." The judge called a brief recess to address the disruption. Security officers approached. A man who seemed uncomfortable under the sudden attention. Emma's heart raced. Was this the break she needed? As the courtroom emptied slightly for the recess, whispers swirled. The prosecution looked unsettled. The man in gray remained seated, but glanced nervously around. Emma took a deep breath, feeling Jasper's warmth beside her. For the first time since the trial began, a flicker of hope sparked inside her. The judge called everyone back to order. The trial was far from over, but the presence of the mysterious man had turned the tide. Emma tapped her foot once more, not from nerves, but from determination. The courtroom buzzed with a new energy as the trial resumed after the brief recess. Emma sat upright, her heart still pounding from the unexpected moment with the man in the gray jacket. Jasper, her loyal golden retriever, remained calmly at her feet, but his eyes were sharper than ever, scanning the room with an intensity that made those nearby uneasy. The prosecutor tried to regain control, speaking louder, attempting to steer the jury's attention back to his carefully prepared story. But the seed of doubt had already been planted. Emma's defense attorney, Mr. Rivera, seized the moment. "Your Honor," Rivera said, standing confidently, "we request that the man in the gray jacket be questioned further. His presence here and his connection to the alleged crime scene cannot be ignored." The judge adjusted his glasses and looked toward the man, who now sat uncomfortably in his chair. "Are you willing to step forward for questioning?" the judge asked. The man hesitated before nodding reluctantly. He stood and approached the stand, his eyes darting around the courtroom, avoiding Emma's gaze. As the questioning began, the man's answers were evasive and inconsistent. He claimed to have been in the area that day, but denied any involvement in the theft. However, the way he shifted uneasily and avoided eye contact suggested otherwise. Jasper, sensing the tension, suddenly stood and moved closer to Emma's side. His tail was low, and his hackles were raised, a clear sign that something was wrong. Emma instinctively reached down to calm him, but Jasper pulled away, his nose twitching as he sniffed the air. The dog's reaction caught the attention of the jury and spectators. A few whispered nervously, unsure what to make of the canine's behavior. Emma felt a sudden rush of clarity. Jasper wasn't just reacting to the man. He was picking up on something deeper, a hidden truth no one else could see. "Your Honor," Mr. Rivera said, pointing toward Jasper, "I believe my client's dog is trying to tell us something important." The judge raised an eyebrow skeptically. "A dog? This is a court of law, Counselor." "I understand, Your Honor," Rivera replied, "but Jasper is a trained emotional support and alert dog. He has helped Emma through many difficult situations and has shown remarkable intuition." The judge hesitated but allowed a brief recess to let Jasper settle. Outside the courtroom, Emma knelt beside Jasper. "What is it, boy?" she whispered. Jasper licked her hand but remained restless. Emma's mind raced back to the day of the alleged theft. She remembered the man in the gray jacket lurking near the house, his eyes watching her every move. He had seemed out of place, unfamiliar. As the trial resumed, the prosecutor's confident tone began to falter. Witnesses were called one by one, each offering their version of the events. But none could place Emma near the missing items at the critical times. Instead, the attention slowly shifted toward the man in the gray jacket. One witness, a neighbor, described seeing a stranger near the foster home around the time of the theft. The description matched the man perfectly. Jasper suddenly stood up again, pacing near the defendant's table. He barked softly but urgently, causing the courtroom to fall silent. Emma's foot tapped rhythmically on the floor, a habit she barely noticed anymore, but one that seemed to calm Jasper. Mr. Rivera approached the bench, whispering to the judge that Jasper's behavior warranted attention. With a sigh, the judge allowed Jasper a moment to be closer to the man in the gray jacket. The dog moved slowly toward the man, sniffing the air around him and finally sitting directly at his feet. Jasper's calm but unwavering gaze made it clear. He was focused on this person. The man's face paled. The courtroom was frozen in silence. For the first time, the jury and everyone present seemed to question the narrative they had been hearing. Emma felt a surge of hope. Jasper was doing what no witness or evidence could, highlighting the real source of doubt in the case. As the day's proceedings ended, Emma left the courtroom with Jasper at her side, the weight of uncertainty lifting. Slightly, the dog had spoken without words, but his message was clear. The truth was about to come out. The courtroom hummed with tension as the trial entered its third day. Emma sat quietly, tapping her foot in a slow, steady rhythm, a nervous habit that had become a small comfort amid the chaos. Jasper, her golden retriever, lay at her feet. Eyes alert and ears perked toward every sound. The man in the gray jacket remained the center of attention. His presence had unsettled the prosecution's case and shifted the atmosphere in the courtroom. No longer was Emma the only suspect. Now suspicion hung in the air like a heavy cloud, thickening with every passing moment. The prosecutor tried to rally his witnesses, but their testimonies felt weaker. Some even contradicted earlier statements. Emma could feel the tide turning. But the courtroom remained far from resolved. Then, without warning, Jasper stiffened. His low growl grew louder, echoing through the courtroom. Emma froze, her tapping foot stilling abruptly. All eyes turned toward Jasper as he stood and took a few steps forward, then barked sharply. The judge slammed his gavel, calling for order. "Control your dog, Miss Carson. If he disrupts this court again, I will have to ask you to remove him." Emma's heart raced. She wanted to calm Jasper, but the dog was fixated. His gaze locked onto the man in the gray jacket, who now looked visibly uncomfortable. Shifting in his seat, summoning courage, Emma stood. "Your Honor," she said, voice steady but urgent. "Jasper is not just any dog. He's trained to alert me to danger and deceit. This man was at the house the day the items went missing. I saw him." The courtroom fell into a shocked silence. The judge regarded Emma with surprise. "Is this your testimony?" "Yes, sir," she replied. The man in gray shot a hard look at Emma, then abruptly stood and moved toward the exit. "I have nothing to say here," he muttered. Security quickly intercepted him. "Sir, you're not free to leave," an officer said firmly. The man struggled, but was restrained and led out of the courtroom, glancing back with a furious glare. Emma's foot began tapping again, a mixture of relief and nervous energy pulsing through her veins. Jasper settled back at her feet, his tail wagging slightly, but eyes still watchful. The judge called for a brief recess to let the courtroom calm down. Outside, murmurs swirled among the audience and reporters. Many whispered about the dramatic turn of events, the mysterious man's presence, Jasper's behavior, and Emma's bold statement. Emma's defense attorney, Mr. Rivera, placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "That was brave," he said, quietly. "This could change everything." Emma nodded, still shaken but hopeful. When the trial resumed, the judge allowed the prosecution to question the security officers about the man's sudden departure. It was soon revealed that the man had a criminal record involving similar incidents, loitering around foster homes and staging thefts. The defense requested an investigation into his involvement with Emma's foster family. As the hours passed, new details surfaced. The man was not a stranger. He had been seen near the foster home multiple times in the weeks leading up to the theft. Some neighbors described him as acting suspiciously, sometimes carrying tools or packages. Emma listened carefully. Each new fact chipped away at the prosecution's case against her. Jasper remained by her side, occasionally glancing up at the jury, as if reminding them who truly needed their attention. The judge called the day's proceedings to a close, but promised to review the new evidence carefully. As the courtroom emptied, Emma felt a mix of exhaustion and cautious optimism. She had no idea what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time, she believed the truth might finally come to light. That night, back in her small apartment, Emma sat beside Jasper, stroking his fur. "Thank you," she whispered. Jasper nuzzled her hand, his faithful eyes reflecting the bond they shared. Emma knew the battle was far from over, but with Jasper by her side, she felt ready to face whatever came next. The following morning, the courtroom was filled with a charged energy, unlike anything Emma had experienced before. The mysterious man in the gray jacket's unexpected removal the day before had opened a crack in the prosecution's carefully constructed case. Emma sat with Jasper at her feet, her fingers folded tightly in her lap, heart pounding but hopeful. Her defense attorney, Mr. Rivera, had worked overnight to gather new information on the man. During a quiet moment before the session began, he whispered to Emma, "We've discovered he has a record arrests for loitering near foster homes and staged thefts. He's been involved in similar setups before." Emma's breath caught. The pieces were starting to fit together, but it felt surreal that someone might have gone to such lengths to frame her. The judge called the court to order and nodded toward Mr. Rivera. "Counselor, what new evidence are you presenting?" Rivera stood confidently. "Your Honor, we ask that the court permit additional investigation into this man's involvement, and we request a pause in proceedings to gather further facts." The prosecutor frowned, but nodded reluctantly. The judge granted the request, and the courtroom buzzed with whispers. Outside the courtroom, reporters gathered around Emma, their cameras flashing. Despite her exhaustion, Emma answered questions with quiet determination. Back inside, detectives had begun following leads on the man in gray. Their findings soon pointed to a disturbing pattern. He had been paid to infiltrate foster homes and stage thefts, creating scapegoats among vulnerable teens. Emma sat stunned as details unfolded during a private meeting with her attorney. The foster father, it appeared, had been desperate to cover his own financial troubles. Rumors of mismanagement and neglect had circulated among social workers, and some suspected the theft accusations were a smokescreen. Emma's mind raced. The trial was no longer just about stolen items. It was about exposing a deeper betrayal. Returning to court, Rivera presented new witness statements. Neighbors testified to seeing the man in gray near the foster home, often carrying packages or climbing fences. One witness recalled overhearing a conversation between the man and the foster father, discussing making sure the girl took the blame. The courtroom gasped. Emma's foot tapped steadily beneath the table, a rhythmic beat that calmed her nerves. Jasper's ears flicked toward the witnesses, eyes alert. The judge listened intently, clearly weighing the gravity of the new revelations. Meanwhile, the prosecution's case began to crumble. The lead investigator admitted the initial evidence was circumstantial, and that new findings required a re-examination of the facts. Emma's hope grew. Later that afternoon, as the court adjourned, Emma sat quietly with Jasper beside her. She looked down at the dog's gentle eyes and whispered, "We're closer, aren't we?" Jasper nuzzled her hand softly. That evening, Emma reviewed the case files with Mr. Rivera. They discussed strategies to highlight the man's role and the foster father's possible involvement in fabricating the theft. Emma knew the path ahead would be difficult. The foster family had powerful connections, and they wouldn't give up easily. But she felt a fierce determination, fueled by Jasper's unwavering loyalty and the truth finally breaking through the lies. The next day, as the trial resumed, the courtroom was prepared for a turning point. Emma tapped her foot once more, not from fear, but from resolve. The courtroom settled into an uneasy silence as the trial resumed. Emma sat quietly, Jasper resting at her feet, but alert, his eyes flicking toward the prosecution's table, where a stack of evidence boxes had been placed earlier. The mood in the room was different now, heavier, filled with anticipation and doubt. Mr. Rivera had filed a motion to review some of the evidence that had been previously dismissed. Among the items was a small envelope marked inadmissible that no one had bothered to open during the initial investigation. The judge agreed to allow the defense to examine its contents in court. Emma's heart raced as Mr. Rivera carefully pulled the envelope from one of the boxes and unfolded its contents. Inside was a blurry photograph. At first glance, it looked like an indistinct shape near the front door of the foster home. But as the court leaned in, details emerged. There, just under a flower pot by the porch steps, was a hand holding a key. The figure was partly obscured, But the shape of the jacket and the hands didn't match Emma's. It was the man in the gray jacket. Gasps filled the courtroom. Emma's foot began tapping faster beneath the table, her mind racing to connect the dots. Mr. Rivera addressed the judge. Your Honor, this photograph is critical. It shows someone else entering the home with a key, not my client. This evidence was withheld from the defense, and we request it be formally admitted. A prosecutor protested, insisting the photo was unclear and irrelevant. But the judge ruled in favor of the defense, citing the importance of all evidence in ensuring a fair trial. The photo was projected onto a large screen. Everyone stared at the image, whispering among themselves. For the first time, it was undeniable. Someone had access to the home besides Emma. Jasper sat quietly but attentively, his eyes bright. Emma reached down and squeezed his fur, drawing strength from his calm presence. The defense team then introduced a security log from the foster home. It showed no record of Emma's arrival or departure during the time frame when the theft occurred. Instead, it recorded a visitor arriving matching the man in gray's description. The courtroom shifted. The prosecution was on the defensive, scrambling to explain the new evidence. Suddenly, Jasper tugged at Emma's sleeve with his teeth and looked toward the prosecutor's assistant sitting near the evidence boxes. His gaze was intense, focused. Emma's foot tapped nervously again. The judge called for a recess to review the new material and address Jasper's unusual behavior. Outside the courtroom, reporters buzzed about the stunning developments. Emma's story was no longer just about an accused foster child. It had become a tale of possible conspiracy and deceit. Back inside, Mr. Rivera requested permission to investigate the prosecutor's assistant. He suspected her involvement in withholding evidence and possibly tampering with the case. The judge agreed to allow further inquiry. Emma sat back down, her tapping foot slowing as hope settled over her. Jasper rested his head in her lap, as if reassuring her that the truth was finally coming to light. As the court resumed, the assistant shifted uneasily in her seat. Jasper's focused stare never wavered. The stage was set for the trial's most dramatic moments yet. The courtroom was thick with tension as the trial entered its sixth day. Emma sat at the defendant's table, Jasper resting calmly but alert by her side. Every eye was on the prosecution's assistant, who sat near the evidence boxes, shifting uneasily under Jasper's unwavering gaze. It started with a quiet moment. Jasper rose suddenly and walked purposefully toward her. The courtroom fell silent. Emma's foot tapped nervously beneath the table, a soft rhythm that mirrored the rising heartbeat in her chest. The dog stopped in front of the assistant and barked once, sharp and clear. A gasp rippled through the crowd. The judge banged his gavel, calling for order, but even he seemed taken aback. Is there a problem, Miss Carson? The judge asked. Emma stood. Jasper is trying to tell us something. Please, check her briefcase. Security officers moved quickly, gently taking the assistant's briefcase. When they opened it, the courtroom held its breath. Inside was a small, hidden USB drive. The judge nodded. This will be examined immediately. An expert technician was called to verify the contents in court. Moments later, the screen lit up with video footage from inside the foster home, the very footage that should have been presented as evidence. The video showed really happened the day of the theft. A man in a gray jacket entered the home, walking directly to the area where the items went missing. Emma was nowhere near the scene. The footage clearly showed the man removing the valuables. The courtroom erupted in whispers. The prosecutor's assistant looked pale and defeated. Under intense questioning, she admitted to removing the footage from the case file. I was asked to protect the foster family's reputation, she confessed quietly. I didn't think it would get this far. Emma's foot stopped tapping. Relief and disbelief washed over her. Mr. Rivera pressed further, uncovering more details. A foster father had instructed the assistant to hide anything that could hurt their image, especially video evidence that showed Emma's innocence. The judge slammed his gavel. "This is serious misconduct," he said. "Such actions undermine the entire judicial process." The prosecutor, blindsided by the revelation, requested a moment to consult with his team. Meanwhile, Jasper lay at Emma's feet, his tail wagging gently. Emma smiled down at him, grateful for his unerring instincts. The judge declared a recess and ordered an immediate investigation into the foster family's conduct and the tampering of evidence. Outside the courtroom, reporters captured Emma's quiet but victorious smile. Social media buzzed with support for the girl and her loyal dog. Inside, Emma's life was beginning to change, not just because she was being cleared of charges, but because the truth was exposing a much larger story of betrayal and deception. As the trial prepared to resume, Emma felt a newfound strength. Jasper's actions had turned the case upside down. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for justice. The next chapter of her story was just beginning. The courtroom was electric as the trial moved into its 7th day. The hidden footage had shifted the entire case. Emma sat tall now, her foot tapping rhythmically with a mix of nervous energy and quiet confidence. Jasper lay beside her, his calm presence a steady anchor amid the storm. The judge called the court to order and addressed the jury directly. "Ladies and gentlemen, you have seen new evidence that was previously withheld. This trial is no longer about accusations, but about uncovering the truth." The foster father sat stiffly in the courtroom, his usual confidence replaced by a growing unease. A prosecutor, visibly shaken, struggled to maintain his composure as the walls closed in on the prosecution's story. Witnesses called by the defense provided damning testimony. Neighbors recounted seeing the man in the gray jacket lurking near the home in the days before the theft. A social worker revealed concerns about the foster family's behavior, hinting at deeper issues behind closed doors. Emma listened as the truth unfolded, feeling a sense of vindication she had longed for. Her foot tapped steadily, no longer out of anxiety, but as a quiet rhythm of hope. The prosecution's key witnesses faltered under cross-examination. Their stories no longer aligned with the facts on the newly uncovered video and testimonies. Doubt crept into the minds of the jury, who exchanged glances heavy with uncertainty. The judge paused, then addressed the court. "Given the new evidence and testimonies, this court finds the charges against Emma Carson to be unfounded." A wave of relief swept through the courtroom. Emma's attorney smiled warmly at her. "You're free," he said softly. The courtroom erupted in murmurs of surprise and applause. Emma stood slowly, looking at Jasper with tears in her eyes. She knelt to hug him tightly, grateful for the dog who had helped turn her fate around. But the trial was not over yet. The judge announced an immediate investigation into the foster family's conduct and the role of those who attempted to conceal the truth. The man in the gray jacket was to be apprehended and questioned further. Outside, reporters clamored for interviews. Emma's story became a symbol of resilience and the power of truth. As she left the courthouse, a crowd of supporters cheered. Quietly, Emma smiled, knowing that though this chapter had ended, her fight for justice and reform was only beginning. That night, Emma sat beside Jasper, reflecting on the whirlwind of the past weeks. "We did it, boy," she whispered. Jasper rested his head on her knee, a silent promise that he would always be by her side. Emma knew the road ahead was uncertain, but with Jasper's unwavering loyalty and the truth now shining bright, she was ready to face whatever came next. The courtroom was unusually quiet on the final day of the trial. Emma Carson, now officially cleared of all charges, returned not as a defendant, but as a speaker invited by the judge to share her perspective. Jasper, her golden retriever and silent hero, sat faithfully at her side, eyes bright and attentive. Rose slowly, her heart pounding as dozens of eyes focused on her. Her foot tapped lightly against the floor, a familiar rhythm that kept her calm. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen," she began, voice steady but full of emotion. This trial was about more than proving my innocence. It was about trust, truth, and the importance of listening to voices that might otherwise be ignored. She paused, glancing down at Jasper. "Jasper isn't just my dog. He's trained to sense fear, stress, and deception. Today, I want to ask the court to consider the role of service and support animals in helping uncover truth in difficult situations." The judge nodded thoughtfully. "Go on," Emma continued. "Jasper's instincts helped reveal evidence, no? One else saw. His presence gave me strength and courage when I felt powerless. I believe courts should recognize that animals like Jasper can be vital in seeking justice." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the courtroom. The judge smiled and sighed. "Your request is unusual, but worthy of consideration. This court will review policies related to support animals and their role in legal proceedings." Emma felt a surge of hope. This moment wasn't just about her. It was about changing the system for others who might face similar struggles. After her speech, reporters rushed forward with questions. Emma answered with grace and quiet determination, always giving credit to Jasper. The Foster family's legal troubles began unfolding quickly after the trial. The judge ordered investigations into their conduct, and the man in the gray jacket was arrested on charges of fraud and conspiracy. Emma's story spread across social media and news outlets, inspiring conversations about justice, loyalty, and the extraordinary bond between humans and animals. At home, Emma sat with Jasper curled beside her, a warm sense of peace filling the room. "Thank you, Jasper," she whispered, stroking his fur. "You changed everything." Jasper looked up, eyes shining with understanding. Together, they had faced fear, suspicion, and betrayal, and had come out stronger. Emma knew that with Jasper by her side, she could face whatever the future held. The trial had been a battle, but it was also a beginning of hope, change, and the undeniable power of a girl and her dog.